Next, Kate, if you'd like to come up, we have Kate Adamson. Kate Adamson is a futurist and an ecocentrist. I've just found out what an ecocentrist is. I'm sure she will explain during the course of the presentation. But I'm quite excited about having Kate on us. She is well-renowned, well beyond the world of shipping. And I think when we're looking in the future, we really knew our industry is quite conservative, and we do need people to sort of stretch our understanding of what is possible. So very hopeful that Kate will take us on that particular journey.
Okay, well, I mean, picking up on some of those points, I mean, Mike asked me earlier what the war in Ukraine meant for technology. And I mean, I think interestingly, very much the same as the Falklands War back, in the early 80s, we learned an awful lot about what happened to ships and technology during that war. And exactly the same thing is happening in Ukraine. I think you only need to know that Palantir have opened an office in Kiev, to understand the value of the data that's coming out of Ukraine. And so that's, I think, very significant, very important. And it picks up on Dominic's point about the ability of the Chinese to actually adopt new technology in their military, which is absolutely correct. And I think from a geopolitical standpoint, I mean, the US, the Air Force Secretary, I think only 2 days ago stood up and said China is preparing for a war, and specifically a war with the United States. And it's unusual for Dominic may have a different view, I think it's probably unusual for an Air Force Secretary to actually come out and say that. So, the US is very concerned about it. And I think when you look at China generally, they've got severe economic problems, they've got severe ecological problems, and she's not in a very strong position on those. And it's not unknown in those circumstances for a little local war to be a bit of a distraction. It's one or two things: you either concentrate on the problems, or you create a different, bigger problem for everybody to look at instead. So I think there are some really significant dangers there. What that means in terms of for business and generally in shipping specifically, well, what we're really seeing is what I call a new moral age that we're entering, because business generally over the last few hundred years has been allowed to be neutral. We have a job to do, which is to make profit. And there's been this impartiality, this neutrality, if you like. And I think we, as a shipping industry, particularly, have very global perspective. We are very multicultural, very diverse. And you can work with people from all sorts of different backgrounds and cultures, and we have if you like, a higher purpose. And up until now, that higher purpose has been building businesses and making money for everyone. And as I say, in this new moral age, we're suddenly asking businesses to pick a side, and that is extremely uncomfortable. We are asking businesses to take positions on social, cultural, economic questions that up until now we've been it's been much easier to skirt. And I think what you're seeing with this friendshoring, I call it moral shoring actually, I think we're moving from value chains to values chains. And it's extremely costly. I mean, I think it's up to 5% of global GDP, it could cost if this friendshoring, moral shoring trend continues. And that's very significant. And I think for the businesses that I speak to and I work with, I think they're coming to a realization that the old ways really have disappeared now. They're evaporating. The idea that if you went into a potential client or customer and you had a good service, you had good prices, etc., and you ran a tight ship, then you had a good chance of getting the business. Now it's, who have I got in my supply chain? And I'm actively working with clients now who are pulling people out of their supply chains. This de-risking, is happening now. And decarbonization is a part of that. Because when we look at the ESG agenda, everybody just silos it as decarbonization. But it's not. The S and the G are unbelievably significant. And this is what shipping's clients, as part of their supply chains, they're looking down and they're saying, what about the S and the G? Where are they located? Where is the risk? And the other thing I think that Ukraine has highlighted is the stunning lack of resilience. We have a stunning lack of resilience in our global system, and we have terrifying concentration of dependence. If you want to look at shipping, let me just say this. You are not IMO compliant if your satellite system isn't working, right? And that satellite system pretty much is Inmarsat. So if somebody took out Inmarsat, the SOLAS fleet, well, I'm sure there's some insurers in the room, et cetera, right? What would you do then? You've just lost insurance for all the cargo on the oceans, pretty much. That kind of concentration of dependence has gone unnoticed because of our global system, right? And everybody's just got on with it, and it's okay, well, we'll do what makes most sense. We'll do what makes most commercial sense. And what we've ended up with are these huge concentrations of dependence that when things start to fragment, you start to see. And one of those things as well that no one seems to have picked up on is the concentration of dependence of the shipping industry on China. Because the amount of Chinese leasing money that owns ships and the amount of shipbuilding that happens in China and in its orbit is something that the Western governments seem to have just allowed to happen. I mean, my father was down in the Falklands, and I remember very well stuffed ships taken up from trade, Atlantic Conveyor, all these ships that were taken up and used by the Royal Navy to steam south. What would we do now? And these are the kind of questions that we're talking about that we haven't done. And Ukraine has triggered that, but what's going on in China is probably the bigger threat ultimately.